Have you ever noticed how bizarre our traditional approach to healthcare actually is? Think about it for a second. We treat our own bodies with less proactive care than we treat our cars. Your car has a dashboard. If the engine gets too hot or the tire pressure drops, a light flashes immediately on your console. You know exactly when something is shifting out of balance. But with our bodies, we basically wait until the engine is completely on fire, the wheels are falling off, and then we tow ourselves to a doctor and say, "Hey, I think something is wrong."
That is a painfully accurate metaphor. For the entirety of medical history, we have operated on a purely reactive model. You feel fine, or at least you think you feel fine, until a physical symptom literally screams at you. Disease progresses silently in the background for years, sometimes decades, and medical intervention only begins when the damage is already visible. It is crisis management, not healthcare.
Exactly. And that is exactly what I want to dive into today. Because we are standing on the edge of a massive paradigm shift. For the first time in human history, we do not have to wait for the fire to start. We can continuously monitor our physiology in real time. We are moving from that old waiting room to the future clinic, where artificial intelligence, smart wearables, advanced blood diagnostics, and human doctors all converge. But what does that actually look like? And more importantly, what happens when our biology is constantly being watched?
It is a thrilling and, admittedly slightly intimidating, frontier. To understand where we are going, we first have to look at the core flaw of where we are today. In the medical field, we often refer to the current system as snapshot medicine. When you go to a clinic, you get a 15-minute consultation. Maybe they draw some blood. That blood test is essentially a Polaroid picture of your health at 9 a.m. on a random Tuesday. But human biology is not a Polaroid picture. It is a continuous, highly dynamic movie.
I love that analogy. If you only watch one single frame of a 2-hour movie, you have absolutely no idea what the plot is. You don't know if you are watching a comedy, a tragedy, or an action film. You just see a character standing in a room.
Precisely. Your physiological stress levels change daily. Your sleep architecture shifts every single night. Your inflammation markers rise and fall based on what you ate, how intensely you exercised, or whether your immune system is quietly fighting off a virus. When doctors only get to see that one isolated frame from an annual checkup, so many crucial, underlying patterns remain completely invisible to us.
Which brings us to the wearable revolution. And to be clear, we are not just talking about those old devices that count your steps and congratulate you for walking to the fridge. We are talking about clinical-grade sensors, like smart rings sitting quietly on your finger, devices that track heart rate variability, sleep stages, blood oxygen levels, temperature trends, and physiological stress, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And that continuous stream of data is what makes this transformative. Because the human body rarely just breaks down overnight. It whispers long before it shouts. A continuous monitor might pick up a subtle decline in your overnight recovery, a creeping elevation in your resting heart rate, or a slight autonomic nervous system imbalance weeks or even months before you actually feel sick. We are finally capturing the whispers.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a moment. If my smart ring is telling me everything about my nervous system and my recovery, do I even need to get my blood drawn anymore? Can we finally say goodbye to needles and lab tests?
Not quite yet. And honestly, probably never. Wearables and blood tests do two very different but highly complementary things. Wearables track the dynamic rhythm of your nervous system and your physical behaviors. But laboratory blood testing looks under the hood at your internal biochemical reality. A smart ring cannot tell you your exact thyroid hormone levels. It cannot measure your insulin resistance, your lipid profile, or specific nutrient deficiencies.
So, to go back to the car metaphor, the ring tells you how the car is driving on the road, but the blood test tells you exactly what kind of oil is inside the engine.
That is exactly right. They are two halves of the same biological puzzle. They do not compete with one another, they complete the picture. But here is the catch, and this is perhaps the biggest bottleneck in modern medicine right now: fragmentation. Your sleep data lives in an app on your phone. Your blood test results are locked in a PDF file from a laboratory. Your daily stress and lifestyle habits are just floating around in your head. None of these systems talk to each other.
Right, and then the doctor only has a few minutes during an appointment to try and magically weave all these isolated data points together. It is an impossible task for a human brain, which is where the artificial intelligence layer has to step in, right? The real revolution isn't necessarily the sensor on your finger. It is the interpretation of what that sensor is actually saying.
That is the absolute key. We are already drowning in health data. Modern healthcare generates petabytes of it. What we lack is meaning. Artificial intelligence is uniquely positioned to find the hidden correlations in those massive datasets. Imagine a system that can look at your sleep trends over 6 months, cross-reference them with your latest inflammatory blood markers, factor in your daily stress physiology, and realize, when this person's deep sleep drops by 20%, their insulin resistance spikes 3 days later.
That is incredible. It shifts the entire medical model from looking at isolated numbers to understanding systems biology. It is connecting the dots in real time. But I have to ask the elephant in the room question, because I know people listening are thinking about this. If an AI can analyze my blood, track my ring, and predict my metabolic dysfunction better and faster than a human can, are we just engineering the human doctor out of existence?
It is a very common fear, but the short answer is no, absolutely not. Medicine is fundamentally not just a data processing exercise, it is a deeply human endeavor. It requires empathy, ethical judgment, and an understanding of a patient's complex emotional context. An algorithm might tell you that a patient's stress markers are dangerously high, but it takes a human doctor to sit down, look that patient in the eye, and find out they just lost their job, or they're going through a painful divorce, or they are grieving.
So the AI does the heavy analytical lifting, finding the patterns in the noise, which actually frees up the doctor to be a healer again, to listen, to connect, to apply wisdom?
Exactly. AI will augment doctors enormously. It will give them clinical superpowers. But human clinical wisdom and that fundamental bedrock of trust between a patient and a physician remains entirely irreplaceable. We are not replacing humanity with algorithms. We are elevating humanity with intelligence.
Let's talk about what that future clinic actually feels like to walk into, because this paints a picture of a wellness center that looks vastly different from the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting rooms of today. We are talking about a system that focuses on detecting physiological imbalance long before it becomes a labeled chronic disease.
Imagine walking into a clinic where your doctor already knows your baseline before you even sit down. They see your wearable data seamlessly integrated with your longitudinal blood markers on a single dashboard. They don't just give you generic advice like, your cholesterol is a bit high, try to eat less fat. Instead, they say, we noticed your heart rate variability is declining alongside a subtle rise in inflammatory markers and disrupted circadian rhythms. Let's adjust your lifestyle right now, before this turns into metabolic syndrome in 5 years.
It is true personalized medicine, not a one-size-fits-all generic brochure on healthy living. Because no two nervous systems are identical, right? My stress response is completely different from yours.
Precisely. Biological individuality is the future. We all metabolize food differently, we all handle psychological stress differently, and we all require different recovery protocols. Treating everyone with the exact same broad-stroke advice is an outdated concept. Future medicine will recognize your unique biological fingerprint.
But we cannot ignore the ethical shadow hanging over all of this. Continuous monitoring sounds amazing for longevity, but it also sounds a bit like a biological surveillance state. Who owns all this deeply intimate data? How do we make sure this technology empowers people instead of just creating a society of anxious hypochondriacs who are constantly checking their health scores every 5 minutes?
That is the philosophical tightrope we have to walk as a society. If we are not careful, continuous monitoring can easily cross the line from healthy awareness into obsession. The goal of health technology must be to foster self-awareness and resilience, not fear. We have to build systems with ironclad data privacy, ensuring that the individual always owns their biology. The technology should operate quietly in the background, tapping you on the shoulder only when you need to pay attention, rather than dominating your daily thoughts.
It is about using data to live your life better, not living your life to serve the data.
Perfectly said. The ultimate metric of success for the future clinic is not just how much data we can collect, It is whether that data actually translates into a better, longer, and more vibrant human experience.
Which brings us back to the core philosophy of platforms like OXYZEN. It is not just about selling a sleek ceramic ring or offering another app with charts and graphs. It is about true health intelligence. It is about understanding the deep, complex relationship between your stress, your recovery, your metabolism, and your long-term resilience.
Because the greatest medical breakthrough of our lifetime is not going to be a single magic pill. It is not simply about extending our lifespan so we can live to be 100 years old in a state of frailty and medication. It is about understanding the body early enough to preserve vitality, to keep people thriving, moving, and living fully, long before disease even has a chance to take root.
A completely new model of health. Human wisdom, continuous biology, and artificial intelligence, all working together in harmony. It really makes you wonder what your own body is whispering right now, and whether you finally have the right tools to listen to it.
The tools are finally here. The dashboard is lighting up. The next step is simply paying attention to the signals.
Such a powerful thought to leave us with. Vitality over mere survival. Interpretation over just raw data. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the future clinic. Take a moment today to listen to what your physiology is telling you. Until next time, stay curious and stay healthy.